This is the Storyworks Roundtable, where we have conversations about craft. Because becoming a successful author begins with writing a great story. Hello and welcome to this week's Storyworks Roundtable. Today, Kathryn, Robert, and I are talking about the interplay between point of view and dramatic tension in your story. So point of view, of course, is not just your POV character's perspective on the story. It is also narrative point of view. So it is everything about the way your story is told, from, tense to person to emotional distance, chronological distance. Emotional distance is also called psychic distance. And you use that to create mood and, voice, so many things. So there you go. We all know you want dramatic tension, lots of it, to keep those pages turning. Robert and Kathryn, do either of you notice as you're writing or as you're revising ways in which that interplay is affecting your story?
In terms of where I am at the moment with first-person point of view, that makes it interesting in what I choose to withhold character-wise, because you have to be a bit careful that you don't manipulate the reader too much by withholding things that, if the character's been completely transparent about everything through the whole story, then all of a sudden they withhold the very thing that causes the climax. It's annoying, I think, as a reader, because you think, you've hidden that deliberately. So I've tried to sort of seed a few things where it deliberately just fades to black, and then the next part is we're in the action of that particular previous thinking now being played out. And actually, I've seen that, this is first-person present tense. I've been reading, for fun, the Robert B. Parker Spencer series, which I've never read before, the noir detective. And I can see why they're so well-loved, because they're spectacularly fun. And I've now gotten through 26 of them in about 5 weeks. So they've been they're not particularly long.
Wow.
but they're like 60,000 words or something, so they're not hard to read fast. But there's something about the way that the character works with his particular quirks, and dialogue especially is very good. And as you know, I'm a fan of dialogue. But what's really good is that sometimes you know what the character's thinking, and sometimes he just So I sat down with the other two guys and told them my plan, and then it just moves on to the plan being enacted, and you don't know what the plan is. Yet at other times you know fully what's going on in his head, because he's trying to puzzle stuff out. And I'm thinking, how do you balance that out? Why is it that I'm not annoyed when the plan is withheld? And thinking, well, hang on a minute, we were just fully in his head for about 2 pages before, and now it's just, and it's, I don't know. I don't honestly know what's made the difference, other than that clearly that's been seeded in somewhere along the line. So the tension is created by the withholding in that particular case.
Right. Yeah, well, as readers and as audience, we understand the game that's being played with us, and we agree to it. There's a social contract created between an author and a reader when you put a novel out there. And so we don't expect everything to be given to us, because then, we're getting 4 instead of 2 plus 2, which is, that excellent TED Talk by the guy whose name I'm forgetting, from Pixar Studio, yes, who was talking about Toy Story, right? We talked about that in an episode. So Kathryn, you'll have to find the link for the show notes. And our last episode, we talked about Finding Nemo. So a double shout out to Pixar here. Right. But it's the same in third person as it is in first person, whether you're in first person or close third. Your narrative story, which is everything except for action and, movements basically on the page, is going to give certain things to the reader and withhold certain things in order to create that dramatic tension and keep us moving forward. Tension is basically what happens next, right? The reader says, I got to know what happens next. As long as we have that question in our mind, we're going to keep reading. We get bored with books when it's too obvious, when we're being spoon-fed, when nothing is surprising or revelatory. And so that interplay between point of view and tension is critical. It's fundamental to any story.
Yeah, and it's not dependent on POV, and I think it's dependent on how you craft. I've seen it in poor stories where the author has perhaps thought that introducing more POVs will increase the tension because now the main character doesn't know what the other characters know, and and it loses me. It really does. I just think, why did you bother? There's no need. You don't have to fill in that gap. We can do it for ourselves. We're not stupid as readers.
Right.
And so I think a mistake as a newbie author is to choose too many points of view because they think it creates intrigue and interest when actually it can do the very reverse of that, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it does. Absolutely. Because it puts too much in front of the reader and it takes away from the enjoyable process of discovery as we move through a story. And, it doesn't depend on first person or third person, or being creative with second person or something. And it doesn't depend on tense. Past tense creates just as much tension as present tense. So what it depends on, as you said, Robert, is the crafting. It's how you structure your narrative, how you tell that story to the reader, how you create the escalation in the plot points that are drawing us forward toward the climax, how you develop the relationships between your characters so that we're wondering, is the supporting character going to, stab our protagonist in the back? Or, are there lies between these characters? Who can we trust? That kind of intrigue is what keeps us asking what's going to happen next. But if you give us all of those points of view, for example, give everybody a point of view, follow everybody everywhere they go, then we know too much. We see everything. Everyone's motivation is clear. And we lose the intrigue. We lose the suspense of the unfolding of the story.
Yeah, and if you think about how far away you get from living vicariously, which is possibly the reasons why we read fiction, then experiencing one or two points of view is being transported, and not too dissimilar to maybe ourselves and then our dreaming selves, and it's kind of doable. But if you think about how we go through life, we don't go through life imagining we're in all these other people's bodies all the time and trying to see life through their eyes. So it becomes wearing, I think, as well. I look, it's a personal point of view. I'm not a big fan of multi POV stories. Never have been, and don't mind. Okay, so Lord of the Rings is great, and that's got plenty of them. So I suppose again, it comes down to craft. Let me retract my comment.
Yeah, no, it does all come down to how well it's executed. But I like what you were saying about the empathy piece. We read to live vicariously. That's true. And we do that by feeling empathy for what somebody else is going through. And when you get too many point of view characters on the page, you're asking the reader to spread out their empathy, to disperse it between lots of different characters and lots of different experiences and lots of different worldviews and motivations and all of those elements that go into story. So there is a strong case to be made for limiting the number of point of view characters you put into your novel, because you are more likely to effectively create tension in your story by engaging that reader's empathetic drive, in a much tighter, more focused way. And that doesn't mean there aren't some great novels with loads of point of views that are lots of fun, but, on the whole, you're going to be doing yourself and your readers a favor by keeping it to 1, 2, or maybe 3 point of view characters as opposed to more, 4 and up.
Yeah, again, a clear example is, as I've said, I've just sped through a whole load of these Robert B. Parker Spencer series novels, and they're pretty much, with a couple of exceptions, all just single POV, first person past tense. And in the exception, it was quite jolting because I've been reading these books from one to, literally as soon as I finish one, I'm on the next. And, excuse me. And it started with a prologue from an unnamed character's point of view to set up the villain. And it felt kind of cheating because the Spencer character is a private detective. Their job is to, in fact, many, many times Parker has the detective slightly bewildered in the sense that, he'll say, well, I don't really know anything here. I haven't got anything on this person. I don't know how the murder was done. I don't know why. So, in fact, I got nothing. So, okay, well, what do you do when you got nothing? You start hassling people. So, all right, well, I'll start hassling people. So it's really brilliantly done because you think, how's he going to get out of this? And then the detective is there sitting, how am I going to get out of this? It sort of mirrors your experience. So therefore, when you then introduce another POV, which is from the villain's point of view, it robs you of the detective having to think things through because now we know. So, oh, this guy. Ooh, how's he going to catch him? So it becomes a how-to, not a who. And it wasn't what I was used to reading. So it was a little jolting. It was still a great story because of the character. But it was interesting, the choice of that. And then maybe 10 books on, that hasn't happened again. So I wonder whether there were, agent or editor feedback on that.
Are you ready to take your storycraft to the next level? StoryWorks Fiction Online School has courses available right now, from micro courses on character traits to master level workshops on plot and building characters. There are also live workshops with your instructor in the classroom with you every week, guiding your progress and workshopping your manuscripts along the way. All students enrolled in StoryWorks Fiction, whether active in a class or not, can take advantage of the monthly free live Q&A calls with Alida. Check out storyworksfiction.com today and take your storycraft to the next level. Yeah, that's interesting. And when you are reading a series like that, and something really stands out as the exception to the rule, then it feels accidental. You're like, why did you do this when you so clearly don't elsewhere? You obviously don't need to do that to write a good story. So why do it here?
Yeah, it was interesting. Yeah, I mean, well, it could have been experimental, So we all do these things. So it's not necessarily. I'm not actually leveling it as a criticism, other than that it's something that, had you read these books once per year, you would probably not have commented. But because I'm sandwiching them all in this sort of binge, it's very interesting to see where there are any style changes. And what's magnificent is the character arc throughout the series is extraordinary, and the reusing of other characters is brilliant. But anyway, that's a different thing to POV.
Nice. Yeah. It does raise the point of, why make one choice versus another one. And I encounter a lot of writers in my editing and coaching business who think if I use this point of view, for example, first person present tense, I will have more tension, right? If this, therefore that. And I'm always saying, no, that's not the way this works. It isn't just, no. So what are good reasons? And, saying something like, I've been writing third person past tense my whole life. Now I'm going to write something in first person present tense because I feel like it. That's a totally valid choice. That is artistic motivation. Go for it, but find your reasons that are for the story and for you as a writer, not, oh, I think, or I heard once somebody said, or this book was written that way and I liked it. Therefore, that's not a reason to structure your novel, your point of view a certain way. I think you'll end up struggling and being disappointed because it's not, if I choose first person, I'll write a better book. That's not how it works. I don't know.
Yeah, I think for me, especially as if I'm going through and I'm filtering through different areas, like, okay, I don't have enough tension here, I'm looking at this. Sometimes it helps me to switch point of view in order to figure out why I'm losing tension there, because then I can kind of come at it from a different angle. And a lot of times it's because I'm filtering wrong, right? So I'm using my POV as that filter, right? And I'm just not using it effectively. So it's okay, if I switch this to, right now I'm third person past, I'm limited, I'm right here. And if I switch it to where I'm first person or something, then something will click. Oh, okay, that's why, because I need to include this in order to make that really pop or shine or have that tension moment or leave the tension on the page rather than dissipating it. So I think sometimes you can use your POV toolbox as an identifier too, because it does it's like a crutch. Oh, it must just be my third person limited point of view. It's not working for me right here, but it's really, why is it not working? Not that it can't work, because it should work in every situation, right? Because tension is a product of what you're leaving off the page or putting on the page, not a product of the filter with which we're viewing it, right?
Yes. Yeah. And I love that you said that, Kathryn. I think that's such a great point and great takeaway for everybody. And it doesn't mean, oh, the scene suddenly worked when I went to first person, therefore I need to rewrite my whole book in first person. It just helps you turn your gears in a different way and find that thing that you now need to put into your third person past tense, close point of view narrative.
And I tend to find personally, as the tension starts racking up, and I will accidentally switch to present tense, not because of tension, but because of pacing. My brain starts going faster and faster and faster. And so then people start saying things rather than setting things. You know what I mean? But I'll switch tenses on myself. And then actually to be able to go back through and fix that, I can identify both tension and pacing issues that are out of whack, because why did I do that? So it's kind of a cool diagnostic. When did I leave that point of view? Why did I leave that point of view? And what do I need to fix in order to make it better?
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know if that ever happens to me. I think I'm more likely, if I'm writing something in the present tense, to slip into past, because I think that's more natural and I'm much more embedded in writing in the past tense. I don't know. Do you shift, Robert, while you're drafting? Do you find your mind wanting to jump tracks?
Yeah, well, they usually, when I'm back in revision mode, I normally have to correct the slipping into past tense from my present tense novel. So it does happen for sure. I wonder if that's just the very nature of us when we relate stories to each other, when we explain what happened when we went to the supermarket or when we traveled overseas. We're generally not talking in present tense. I mean, sometimes we do. So there I am. There's this guy standing in front of me. He's holding a knife. I don't know what to do. So you might be saying things like that in present tense, but I think for the most part we relate stories to each other as if something had happened. So it feels more natural, isn't necessarily. People clearly vary. That some authors find it much easier to write in one tense than another, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the stories are better or worse for it. I think that's a different thing. I mean, I've definitely found it harder to write first person present tense, more challenging. But as I've been rereading a draft recently, I honestly haven't noticed it. And I was way back when I wrote book one, I was trying to look at writing to market and what the genre would accept, and honestly, classic science fiction space opera just isn't written first person present tense. It just isn't. It's not generally done. So here I am going against the flow, and there are a couple of indie authors who do it, but I contacted Lindsay Broker and asked her, and she said an extremely wise thing. She said, just if your story's good, people aren't going to notice it. Okay, yes, it's as simple as that, isn't it, Lindsay? That's right. Why beat yourself around the head around, I need to use first person present tense because it's all the rage, or because it's going to create more tension, or because it's so much more immediate, or because we get right in the character's head, and now that I know, after having, innumerable conversations with you, Alida, and the podcast, that it's really got nothing to do with that. It's part of the weft. It's part of the tapestry that we weave.
Right. Yes, and we want it to become invisible. So if you start, let's say you've only read past tense, third person novels, and then you pick up that first person present tense story, it might be like suddenly going to see a Shakespeare production, and you need like 10 minutes, 15 minutes to get your ear tuned to that accent and the dialect and the rhythm of speech, and then you can go with it. And so you start reading this novel and you're like, wait, I
Yes.
say what? And then if the story's good, you just roll with it. And we had that episode where we talked about Frederick Backman's A Man Called Uva, and he does the main story in the present tense, but then there are chapters interspersed about the past where we get the backstory in scene as though it's actually happening, and he switches the POV to the past tense. And it's such an enjoyable story and so fluid that I found myself, halfway through one of those chapters, and then suddenly I go, oh, wait, we're in past tense. Oh, yeah, we are in past tense. And then it was like, yep, okay, this is what he's doing. And then it was invisible to me and very enjoyable for being invisible. Right? So, yeah, at the end of the day, you pick the point of view that suits your story, that suits your artistic choices. With Saving Annabelle, I have a first person narrator because the story was coming to me in her voice. There's a reason for that choice. And the tension was going to be there or not based on how I wrote the story, not based on whether I had a first person or third person narrator.
Yeah. How do you address I heard this leveled once about first person present tense, which is, because of that, because it's written that way, the main character doesn't die. So do you think that's just a silly thing? Because of course they can die.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, you could have the same argument about any point of view, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is in one third person past tense point of view character the whole time. Well, that must mean they don't die, but
or they don't die until the end of the book, or they die and then the point of view character shifts and we have a different character take center stage and carry the plot forward, or, so no, I mean, you can, I'm going back to my cardinal rule, you can do whatever you want so long as you do it well. So yeah, when we die, we're going to stop telling our own story. Sure. Okay, that doesn't apply to fiction because fiction is our invention, so we get to make our rules happily and play in our own playground.
Yeah, it might mean that it's hard to have a sequel with the same character, but you know. But then again, they could always jump the shark. You know, it was all a dream.
Right, there you go. I think most of us, 98% of the time, don't expect our main characters to die anyway. So
there is that. There is that.
I'd be pretty sad.
I did once. I knew she was dying, and she did.
Right? Yeah. But I think most of the time, for most stories, like, we don't enter into the story with the desire or the expectation for our main characters to die anyway. So that shouldn't necessarily be why you choose a specific point of view.
No, I always thought it was a very weird observation. Okay,
right.
Okay, well, yeah. Okay, maybe logically you can say if they are, if you're thinking that this is a first-person present sense, therefore they are the writer of the book, therefore they must still be alive because the book is existing. Right, okay, that's one way to think about it, but that's a silly way to think about it.
Mm-hmm. You know that Cat Stevens song, if I don't have hands anymore, then I won't have to work.
Right,
and if I don't have feet or legs, I won't have to walk, right? And then there's a verse that says, if I didn't have a mouth, then I wouldn't have to. And the lyrics, right? The singing just stops and the music plays on. It would be like, okay, so your first person narrator dies.
And yeah, that's it.
Cover.
The last 40 pages are blank.
Yes. Yep. Just
okay. Someone please do that now. Just have illustrations from then on.
Of what? Of the corpse?
An obituary.
Just talk
about resolution problems, Kathryn. Refer back to our Finding Nemo episode.
That's
Wait,
right.
Where's the reader's satisfaction?
Yeah, that's right.
There is none. No, you can't do that. Oh wait, cardinal rule.
Was there an HEA? Well.
If you're listening to this podcast, you are probably a writer, and you've maybe heard me talk about the Storyworks reading series. It is the new branch in the Storyworks family tree. It is a literary journal podcast. That's right, a hybrid, a literary journal for your ears, with a print anthology at the end of the year of the best of the podcast. I am open for submissions, and I want to see your best prose right now. I am taking both fiction and creative nonfiction. You can read the guidelines and submit your work at storyworkspodcast.com/submit. What are you waiting for? It's time to see your stories published and sit on the other side of this microphone from me. Have a conversation about your storycraft. Thank you for listening to the Storyworks Roundtable. Find all our shows, show notes, and videos at storyworkspodcast.com. Is that our end? Other thoughts?
We all slipped off this mortal podcast.